We are reading today from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 13, entitled Brahma Stealing the Boys and Calves. Text number 1. Shukadeva Goswami, after describing Krishna and Balaram, their playful activities in the pastures of the Vrindavan forest, and how one day when Krishna was playing with the Gopas, the associate of Kamsa, Agha, swallowed all the cowherd boys, as well as Lord Krishna, in the form of an enormous serpent. How is it possible for Krishna to rid the world of such a cruel, violent asura as Agha, when limitless little calves and cowherd boys are filling his body inside? For this purpose, Krishna entered the mouth of Aghasura. When it closed, Krishna expanded himself. The demon was liberated. In fact, was sent to eternally reside with the Lord in the spiritual world. Krishna, upon one glance, brought all the dead gopas back to life. In the form of Mahavishnu, Krishna's glance invests within the entire cosmic manifestation of life. You are like a cowherd boy. And similarly, we are all spiritually as if dead, the living dead. The soul is eternal, the body is dead matter. When the soul forgets its own eternal existence and thinks, I am just this dead matter of the body, then that forgetfulness is compared to death. Because in reality, there's no such thing as death. Death is only the illusion of the bodily concept of life. So similarly, even while we're living and breathing, spiritually we're dead. We're forgetting our eternal nature and our relationship with God. And Agasura is like the personification of Tamaguna, Rajaguna. And under the influence of this darkness of Maya, we are sleeping. Spiritually dead. And it's not possible to wake up unless Krishna glances upon us. Daivi heshu gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mama vamya papadyante maya meta durantite. Krishna tells this material nature is very difficult to overcome. Rajaguna, Tamaguna are so powerful. Like ropes, they keep us bound to this state of spiritual sleep. But when we take shelter of Krishna, by His mercy alone, we could wake up from the ignorance of illusion. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, he gave us this simple message. Jeev Jago, Gauda Chandra Bole, Kota Nidra Jayo Maya Pisad Shira Kole. Wake up, sleeping souls, wake up. You are sleeping in the lap of Maya. In that sleep, it's as if we're dead to our true self. But that glance of mercy can immediately awaken us. This is the path of bhakti, or devotional service. By the sincerity of our efforts in wanting to please Krishna, Sravanam Kirtanam Smaranam, Sravana Kirtana Smarana Bandhana Pada Sevana Dasyare Pujana Saki Jana Atma Nivedana. These 9 processes of devotional service just connect us to Krishna by pleasing Him. And then by the glance of His mercy, we can wake up to our eternal blissful nature, where we always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Nasta prayesya bhadreshu nityam bhagavati sevaya bhagavati uttama sloke bhaktir bhavati naistaki. When Srila Prabhupada was on Jaladuta, he was looking out at Boston Harbor and he was seeing the type of ignorance and passion that had completely consumed, like Agasura, the whole civilization of the West. How people were helplessly sleeping to their own spiritual nature, totally awake to the dream of their misconceptions. He offered this prayer. Krishna, why have you brought me to this horrible place? After all, he was a resident of Vrindavan. And he came to Boston, to New York, just to give the message of Krishna, to give the process of hearing about Krishna and chanting his names. Actually, Srila Prabhupada, as a resident of Goloka Vrindavan, came to the whole material world for this purpose. On behalf of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to teach people how to wake up to their own blissful eternal nature. Could everyone hear? Huh? No. The more people that are involved, the more complicated it becomes. Anyways, whether you hear or not, I will say the same thing. So when Srila Prabhupada was offering this prayer, Krishna, how will they understand your message? I have no power to explain it. As far as we know, Srila Prabhupada had never spoken to an American in his entire life. And here he was. He didn't know if they would understand the way he spoke or not. And what to speak of speaking the highest philosophy. So Prabhupada was praying, begging. Prabhupada called himself an insignificant beggar. He was begging Krishna, please, you speak through me this message. And Srila Prabhupada, in his beautiful Bengali prayer, he inserts the Sanskrit verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, including the one that we have just quoted. That one who regularly hears from the Srimad Bhagavatam, they become cleansed of their anarthas. Krishna within their heart becomes so pleased because they're developing a taste for hearing, that he purifies the heart and ultimately reveals himself. And we could pass through the modes of passion and ignorance to the state of pure goodness, pure devotional service. A major part of this process of devotional service that Lord Chaitanya revealed is hearing and chanting. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Swarup Damodar Goswami, Ramananda Rai, as well as his other devotees. Throughout the day, throughout the night, they would have Harinam Sankirtan and Harikatha, speaking about Krishna's pastimes and teachings. There's that beautiful story just close to Kolkata, Varaha Nagara. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was passing through, and he heard one learned Brahmin, simple-hearted man. He was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya could feel Krishna so strongly in his heart in the words of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this man was reciting it with a simple heart of devotion. Lord Chaitanya cried out, go on reciting, go on reciting. As this Brahmin was reading the slokas, Lord Chaitanya, ecstasy, tears pouring from his eyes, his limbs trembling, his hair standing on end, he danced in ecstasy. The only words that came out of his mouth were, go on reciting. For about 9 hours, Lord Chaitanya was dancing as this devotee was reading Srimad Bhagavatam out loud. And in the end, Lord Chaitanya embraced him. And he gave him the name Bhagavat Acharya. You are the true teacher of Srimad Bhagavatam. That was how Lord Chaitanya had a taste for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And during the last 12 years of his Leela in this world, he spent most of his time in the Gambhira, his small little residence, along with his most intimate devotees, Swarup Damodar Goswami, Ramananda Rai. And they were constantly chanting the holy names and reciting the beautiful pastimes of Sri Sri Radha Krishna and the wonderful stories of Srimad Bhagavatam. But to get a taste for hearing, as being described, is also only possible by the grace of Krishna. When we get the taste for hearing and chanting, Krishna bestows his grace upon us. And in order to get that taste for hearing and chanting, there's no other way except through the grace of Krishna. So at every stage, we are completely dependent on Krishna's mercy. Shushushosha Dadanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirthana Sevana. Krishna gives that taste for hearing and chanting when we sincerely serve the great souls. Mad Bhakta Puja Adya. Krishna tells to Arjuna, his very dear friend, that worship of my devotee is more pleasing to me than worshiping me. Because a devotee gives his heart, his soul. Devotees give their lives for Krishna. Sadhavo hridayam mayam. Because my devotee gives their heart to me, I give my heart to my devotee. Because a devotee knows no one but me, I know no one but my devotee. In the 9th canto, just as we're approaching the 10th canto, we read the story of Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa. Durvasa was such a great saint. He was a yogi who could travel by mantra to every planet in the universe and to the spiritual world. The abode of Vishnu, an expansion with the powers of Lord Shiva. Ambarish was a simple householder. Vishnu told Durvasa that you cannot get my mercy without pleasing my devotees. Such a great yogi as him. Still, what is our position compared to Durvasa Muni? Krishna told him, you cannot get my mercy unless you please my devotees. If you offend my devotees, because I am in the heart of my devotee, if you offend my devotee, you offend me. And if you please my devotee, you please me. So Parikshit Maharaj, his example is so wonderful. He made a mistake and was cursed to die in 7 days. But he had no anger, no enmity. A person of such power and prestige, usually powerful people who have fame, wealth, The whole world is centered around them. Parikshit Maharaj had more power, more prestige, more wealth than anyone on earth. But when this crisis came, it was consistent with his life. He was always centered around pleasing Krishna. As a king, he treated every one of his citizens as his own family. He was servant of everyone. Krishna has entrusted all the people in the world in my care. How I treat them is how I serve Krishna. All the property of this entire earth planet is Krishna's property. I cannot exploit it. I cannot claim proprietorship over anything. Everything is to be utilized for Krishna's service. That's how he lived. And then this ultimate test came. Is he going to sustain that consciousness under these conditions? Where he has massive militaries. He himself is the greatest of all warriors. Grandson of Arjuna, Yudhisthira, saved by Krishna when he was in the embryo of his mother, directly. Such an exalted person. And a little boy, not a great yogi, but a little boy, carelessly cursed him to die in 7 days. That's quite a test for such a person, to kick the emperor of the planet. He could have retaliated in so many ways. Hare Krishna. But he accepted it with a humble heart as Krishna's blessing. Now, opportunity. I have 7 days to completely absorb myself in remembering Krishna. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even disappointed. If this is what Krishna wants, I'm yours. He went to the banks of the Ganges, a holy place, to hear about Krishna, to hear about the goal of life. And all the sages and rishis throughout the universe came there. And consistent to the way he lived his whole life, he respected, honored, and served all of the great personalities that came. And the Srimad Bhagavatam gives a list of just a few of the saints that came. And they were from all different schools of philosophy. He honored and respected all of them and begged for their blessings. And ultimately, they were all trying to decide who among us is going to speak. Because he was asking his questions. What is the goal of life? What is the duty of a person about to die? What is the essence of all the various scriptures and all the various religions? What is the foremost duty for everyone in all circumstances? And out from the forest came Shukadev. At the time he was 16 years old. They all selected him to speak. Not only was he the son of Vyasadeva, but he had a completely pure heart. In fact, Vyasadeva himself was sitting in the audience, along with his guru, Narada Muni, and Parvat Muni, Narada's great friend, and Vishwamitra Muni, who was the guru for Ramchandra in the previous avatars, and Vashishta Muni, who was also the family guru for Ram, Gautam Rishi. So many. They were all there. And they were all eager to hear from Sukadeva Goswami. There was no envy. There was no ego, competitive ego. Everyone simply wanted what was best for Parikshit Maharaj. And not only the message that Sukadeva Goswami is so limitlessly beneficial for all living beings, for all time, but the setting in which it's spoken, where the king of the world has vowed to fast on everything except Harikatha till death, and how blissful he's doing it. Throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, his questions, they just keep getting more enthusiastic. He's listening attentively. We could tell. As Sukadeva is speaking, every little detail Parikshit Maharaj is hearing. And sometimes when he hears an apparent thing that may confuse people for the future, he inquires about it. And part of the setting is all of these sages of all different ages, sages of all ages. Of all different schools of thought, of all different unbelievable, incredible accomplishments. Some of the most famous people that ever lived in the scriptures. They're all assembled with perfect unity, with Krishna in the center, with compassion for Parikshit and for the people of the world, to hear this message. So here we are on the 13th chapter of the 10th canto. Parikshit Maharaj has been for many days hearing Harikatha. And after he hears this story of how Krishna delivered Aghasura, it's really extreme. It's not that we should just listen. We should be there. That's what it really means to hear, that we're there. We're right there with Krishna and the cowherd boys through transcendental sound vibration. Try to grasp how cruel Aghasura is. So envious, so hateful, beyond terrorism that we know today. He wanted to kill Krishna, kill all the cowherd boys, with the purpose that without them, without the little calves, every Brajavasi, every cow, the entire Vrindavan, everyone would die. This is mass murder. And we heard of the Asankyata yesterday, the number of calves and cowherd boys that were out that day with Krishna, they're all now, all of them are in the body of Aghasura. Inconceivable. Mass murder. Yet, not only had he planned, intended, but he was in the process. He did kill. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, they were all dead. He killed all the gopas and all the calves intentionally. And he especially wanted to kill Krishna, because Krishna killed his brother and sister, Baka and Putana. Krishna gave him eternal liberation as being his intimate, loving associate in the spiritual world forever. That's incredible. It's astonishing. The demigods, they were constantly in fear of Aghasura because it was so terrible. So first, they see Krishna's prowess in this way. And then, after Sukadev tells that 1 year later, the cowherd boys entered into the village of Vrindavan, singing in beautiful poetry about this pastime of the deliverance of Agha. Now, if we're sitting without food or water for about 5.5 days, we may not catch that. But Parikshit's so intent, so attentive. He asks Parikshit Maharaj, how is this possible? Such a wonderful pastime. And they didn't tell the Brijabasis for 1 year? And it seemed like they were telling him what happened on the same day? Please explain this to me. And that's where this verse begins. Sukadev Goswami is telling, after Krishna delivered Aghasura, the cowherd boys were all very hungry. So Krishna took the gopas and the calves to a wonderful setting on the banks of Yamuna. And Krishna said, just see how beautiful this place is. There are lotus flowers growing in Mother Yamuna, and so fragrant. They're attracting bees and wonderful birds who are buzzing and chirping so wonderfully. And see how they're in the trees, singing their lovely songs. The sands here are so clean and so soft. This is the perfect place for us to take our lunch. So Krishna sat down there on the bank of the Yamuna, and all the cowherd boys sat in circles around him. It is described that Krishna was like the whorl of the lotus, and the gopas were like the petals, different layers of petals surrounding him. Millions of cowherd boys in a circle around Krishna. Krishna told the gopas, now let us have our calves drink the water from the Yamuna. So as the calves were drinking, the gopas were so playful. They were all looking at Krishna, gazing upon Krishna. drinking the nectar of his beauty. And Krishna was gazing upon each and every one of them. This beautiful pastime is cited in the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat of Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had just met after long separation, the devotees from Navadvip, Shantipuram, and all these different places of Bengal, they had all come. And he took them on a kirtan in Jagannath's temple and then around the temple doing parikrama. And in one place, Lord Chaitanya began to dance. And all the devotees were in a huge circle around him, and so many circles around him. And it is described that although they were on all 8 sides around him, it appeared to each one of them that Lord Gauranga was only looking at them. This is how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how Krishna can reciprocate with the love of his devotee. Even the best among us, we can only see one direction at a time. But everyone is thinking. And there's Lord Chaitanya is only looking at me. How merciful. And it cites that when Krishna was on the bank of the Yamuna, in this particular pastime, all the cowherd boys were gazing upon Krishna. And Krishna was gazing upon each and every one of them, intimately, personally. And the boys, they all had their packed lunches that they had brought from home. And in a spirit of playfulness, the variegatedness of each boy's personality was so sweet. Some of the boys, because every moment is an adventure. Sometimes we just do things for routine. But in the spiritual world, every moment is an incredible, exciting offering of our hearts, of our love, of adventurous. So they made different types of plates for their food. Some put their food on leaves, some on flowers, some on bunches of leaves. Some put their food on rocks. Some put on fruits. Some put on the bark of trees. And as they were eating their food, they were all showing it to Krishna. And Krishna was showing to them. They would taste. And then they would let Krishna taste what they ate. And then Krishna would let them taste what he tasted. And in this way, they were showing, they were tasting, and they were all laughing. And Krishna was telling such wonderful jokes. So they were all laughing and laughing and laughing and gazing upon Krishna and sharing their prasad. The demigods and Lord Brahma, the chief of all devatas, he had seen all these celebrations that the devatas were celebrating Krishna killing Aga. And now he's seeing that supreme personality of Godhead, Yagyabhuk. Yagyabhuk means one who eats the offerings of all yagyas or sacrifices. The greatest sages, rishis, brahmins, devatas, when they offer a yajna, the success is that Krishna will eat the sacred fire is Vishnu. Everything we offer under the sacred fire, it's taken by Vishnu, it's eaten by Vishnu. So the demigods, they go through so much effort for elaborate sacrifices. And here is that same Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman, and he's eating the remnants from the mouths of these little cowherd boys. And he seems so happy. Here is this Param Brahma, the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Creator, Maintainer, and Annihilator of all existences. And he's laughing with his, just like an ordinary boy. This mystified Brahma, it was beyond his calculations. How could God be so ordinary and playful? And how could he be so subordinate to his own friends? They're all equal to him. So Lord Brahma wanted to show his powers, and he wanted also to see, what is this little ordinary cowherd boy named Krishna? What is his powers? He's supposed to be God, but I don't understand this. So as the calves were eating very fresh green grasses that Brahma was providing, he lured them away. And as the gopas were laughing and joking, eating so much adventurous fun, they became very afraid because their calves were nowhere to be seen. Krishna, as the servant of all his devotees, he said, "You go on enjoying eating your lunch. I will personally go to find the calves." At that time, there's a beautiful description that Krishna was in the whirl of the lotus of all of these cowherd boys, and at that moment he happened to be holding in his very soft lotus hand a preparation that Yashoda Maya would make for him. Yogurt, rice, fruit. In the early days of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, this was in the 1960s, the first lady disciple of Prabhupada, Janaki Devi, the sister of Yamuna Devi. She used to love to make different preparations for Srila Prabhupada. And she read this story in Krishna book, and she made that preparation. Dahi, yogurt with fruit and rice, and she gave it to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada asked, what is this preparation called? She had to make something up instantly. She said, "Krishna surprise." And from that day on, every temple of ISKCON made exactly that, and it was called Krishna surprise. Practically every Sunday feast, it was incomplete without Krishna surprise. So how traditions begin are sometimes wonderful. So Krishna was holding this Krishna surprise. And they were all gazing upon him with so much happiness. And Krishna said, I will find the calves. He was so eager to serve his friends. You go on eating and enjoying. And he didn't eat. The Krishna surprise, the preparation was still in his hand. He was so eager to serve his friends, he didn't even eat it. He just went out looking for the calves, holding it. He searched. He searched through the pastures. He searched in the forests. He searched on the riverbanks. He searched in the mountains, in the valleys. He couldn't find the calves anywhere. He came back to the place where all the cowherd boys were taking prasad, and there was nobody there. The calves were gone. The gopas were gone. Krishna knows everything. He's the Paramatma in everyone's heart. He's the Paramatma in and between every atomic particle. Vedaham samadhitani vartamanani charjana babashani chabutani mam tu vedana kaschana. He knows everything, past, present, and future. He knows every desire, every thought, every word, every activity of every living being for all time in the past and all time in the future and everything in the present, and he never forgets anything. That's Krishna. But when he becomes absorbed in his pastimes with his loving devotees, he seems to forget everything except how his devotee is offering loving service to him, and how he's trying to please his devotee. So Krishna knew immediately Brahma has done this, but he pretended just to lead Brahma into this Lila. He pretended to be completely bewildered. Where are my friends? Where are my calves? Everyone's gone. And he's just walking around, apparently in a bewildered state, still holding that Krishna surprise. So Brahma really understands, now I have done my sin. And then Brahma leaves. Krishna wanted to please Lord Brahma. And he especially wanted to please the mothers of the calves and the cowherd boys. Krishna expanded himself within a moment as every calf and every gopa. Incredible. Asankhya. There were limitless calves, limitless gopas. Within a second, not even that, Krishna, all the calves and gopas reappeared, but they weren't them, they were Krishna. And then Krishna led them all back into the village of Vrindavan. And there they blew their bugles and their horns and their flutes. And the mothers of the gopas, their hearts were thrilled. But more than ever before, their children are back. And they greeted their children. They embraced them. And tears were pouring from their eyes. Never had they felt such love for their children before. A great motherly love, even though the children were at this time 5 years old. Still, because their child was Krishna, their breasts filled with milk. And they eagerly fed their children, and their children drank like nectar. All of the mothers of Vrindavan, they loved Krishna more than their own children. And they loved their children more than anyone in this world could love their children. They weren't detached. They were mothers. They were the best mothers. They loved their children limitlessly. But still, they loved Krishna more than their children. And all the cows, they loved their calves intimately, dearly. They would give their life, their souls for their calves' pleasure. But they loved Krishna more than their calves, with motherly affection. And they were all thinking, all the cows and all the mothers, how fortunate Yashoda Mai is. That she gets to do everything for Krishna every day. But they had no envy. None of them wanted to be Mother Yashoda. None of them were thinking, why Yashoda and why not me? They were completely ecstatically happy at the good fortune of Yashoda Mai. At the same time, in their heart of hearts, if only I could have that experience too. Because there was no envy, Krishna wanted to reciprocate. And he became personally the child of every cow and mother. So expertly. Inconceivable. Every detail was identical. Krishna appeared as each of the children and calves. He had the same complexion. Every hair was just like the particular calf. Every detail of what hairs were which colors, and every gopa, the particular bodily features, the characteristics, the qualities, the sound of their voice was identical. Their little habits of how they looked and how they glanced at things, how their teeth were. Krishna was dressed identically, exactly according to how the children were dressed that day. Same jewelry. And because the mothers, since Krishna's birth, had this motherly affection, Krishna gave every one of them the opportunity to feed Krishna their own milk. And Krishna, in the form of their children, drank it like nectar. Such intimacy of love. This went on for 1 year. Now, a mother for a little child who has been raising every day with so much affection and care since their birth, they know thoroughly about their little children. But Krishna played the role of their children so nicely that none of them for an entire year suspected that it was anyone but their child. The only difference was now they loved their children as much as they loved Krishna. And even this they couldn't understand. It was just an infinite flow of loving reciprocation. Krishna gave each cow, each mother, the total fulfillment of their innermost desire. They were Krishna's mother for 1 year. And about 5 or 6 days before the end of the year, Balaram and Krishna, they were watching, and the cowherd men, they were up on the top of Govardhan Hill with cows. When the cows saw their calves, they were so overwhelmed with motherly affection. They ran down the hill. It describes with 2 sets of legs. That means they were what in English we would say galloping down the hill. And Govardhan Hill is a very rough pathway. The cowherd men were so worried. All the cows, they're galloping down the hill over these rocks and bushes without any concern. And they felt very ashamed that how is it we're not able to control the cows? So all they could do is run after them. And the cows ran down to the hill, to the bottom of the hill, and there their calves. And these were calves that were not their newborn calves. They had another calf since then. These are the calves that were born a year or so before. So generally they don't drink the mother's milk. The mother saves the milk for their newborn calf. But the mothers, as they were running down the hill with affection for these calves, their milk bags grew so big and there was milk pouring out onto the Govardhan Hill, and they finally came down, began to lick their calves and lick them with so much affection, it appeared they were trying to swallow them. And from their eyes there were tears pouring in motherly love. And as the calves were drinking the milk, the cows were in ecstasy. The calves were equally in ecstasy. They didn't understand that each calf was personally and directly an expansion of Krishna. The cowherd men, they were so upset that all this was happening. After some time, because when cows run, they could run much faster than humans. So when they finally got down there and they saw what was going on, they were really confused. But then they saw the cowherd boys, who were Krishna. And we've been speaking about motherly affection, but Krishna gave that same chance to all the fathers too. Seeing their children, tears started pouring from their eyes. They embraced their children. They smelled their heads with so much affection. They were overwhelmed. They loved their children like they loved Krishna. They were completely satisfied. And then somehow or other, when they went back to perform their duties, all they could do was remember their children incessantly crying in love. Balaram was watching this. He was bewildered. Because the day that Krishna killed Aghasura and the day that he took lunch on the Yamuna, we don't hear anything about Balaram's presence because it was his birthday. It was Balaram Jayanti. So on that day, Rohini Devi would make sure that Balaram stayed back all day from going to herd the calves, and she did abhishekams for him and have him give so much charity to Brahmins and other saintly people. So Balaram wasn't there. He was not stolen by Brahma. But for almost that full year, Balaram didn't understand what happened. Krishna, when he wants to keep a secret, he keeps it even from himself. Balaram is none different than Krishna. And Balaram was seeing for the whole year everything, and he just thought everything was normal. He was going out and playing with his friends the whole year, joking with them, herding calves with them, taking care of the calves with them. He didn't even know that they were all Krishna. That's how thoroughly exact Krishna played the part of all of the calves and gopas. Balaram could not detect it. But on this day, when he saw this situation at Govardhan Hill, then he thought back of the whole year. Yes, everyone, they love their children just like they love Krishna. How is this? What's going on? And after he thought about it, he came to the conclusion that such loving relationship can only happen if each calf and each cowherd boy is Krishna. He discovered. He inquired from Krishna, and Krishna explained everything to him very nicely. Then on the day of Balaram Jayanti, Balaram was getting abhishekams at home, being bathed and decorated so nicely by mother and giving in charity. And it happened to be exactly 1 year. For Brahma, it was a moment. He wanted to come to see the effect that he had in Vrindavan. He came down on his swan carrier. What did he see? He saw Krishna and all the cowherd boys and all the calves, like every day, performing their wonderful pastimes, like ordinary children. Sudama, Sridama, Subala. He was wondering, how is this possible? Everyone's here in Vrindavan. He had taken the gopas and put them in a mystical sleep and laid them in a secret cave, one of his caves. So he went, he has 4 heads. He doesn't have to do much, he could see everywhere. He went to look in the cave, and he saw they were all sleeping in the cave. Then he looked in the banks of the Yamuna in the forests of Vrindavan, and the same exact gopas and calves were playing with Krishna there. Again he looked in the cave, they were sleeping in the cave. Again he looked in Vrindavan, and they were all in Vrindavan. And now he was becoming confused. was thinking, maybe Krishna's doing this. Maybe when I look to the cave, Krishna puts them in the cave. And then when I look in Vrindavan, he takes them all out of the cave and brings them to Vrindavan. And then when I look back in the cave, Krishna puts them all back in the cave. Or maybe there's two sets. A set of gopas in the cave and a set of gopas and calves in Vrindavan. And if there are two sets, which ones are real and which ones are not real? Maybe these are real, but no, maybe because I took the real ones, so these must not be real, but they look real, so maybe those ones are not real. This is Brahma. Tene Brahma Rida, he's the guru of the universe. He's the father of the universe. He's the creator of the universe. And as he was going back and forth thinking, how is this possible? Who is this? Where is this? Why is this happening? He became more and more confused. It is called Brahma Vimohan Lila. Brahma was totally bewildered. But when Krishna wants to bewilder somebody, there's no limit. Brahma was the most bewildered and confused he had ever been in his life. And by this time, he's about 1.5 trillion years old by our calculation. When he was at the peak of his bewilderment, suddenly he's looking at these cowherd boys. Who are they? How is this happening? I've never seen anything like this. Every calf and boy manifested the form of Vishnu, Narayan, with a blue complexion, with 4 arms, each one holding the conch shell, the club, the lotus flower, and the Sudarsana chakra. And he saw around each Vishnu form, saw all the demigods. He saw all living entities. He saw the Mahatattva. He saw the personification of the 3 modes of material nature, the personification of the false ego, the personification of every state of consciousness. All the sages, all the rishis, everyone, they're all worshiping these limitless Vishnu forms. Now, his bewilderment was beyond the beyond. He was really Vimohan. To the extent his mind went totally blank. He couldn't move. He just became paralyzed. He couldn't even see anymore. And then he realized Krishna's the Supreme Personality of God. He was totally humbled. See, Krishna saw that even Brahma, such a great person, because he's born of a lotus flower, which is a thing of this world, he had certain material vulnerabilities. And although he's such a great personality, for the sake of Krishna's pastime, Krishna saw a speck of false pride in Brahma. He's the father of all beings. So Krishna wanted to relieve him of that. And at that state, Brahma completely humbled himself before Krishna, while he was in a paralyzed, totally blank state of bewilderment. He understood that even though he's the most powerful personality in the entire universe, all of his powers were like the light of a glowworm, a firefly. In total darkness, the firefly thinks he's lighting up the sky, because he can only see what's immediately around him. The firefly doesn't have a telescope to see what's going on thousands of miles away. All he could see is what's immediately around himself. So when a firefly puts on his little light, he thinks, I'm lighting up the universe. But he can only think that way in the darkness. But when the sun comes out at noon, the firefly realizes, I'm totally insignificant compared to the sun. That was Brahma's realization. I think I'm great only because I'm in the darkness of forgetting Krishna's greatness. But in the light of Krishna's greatness, I understand I'm totally insignificant. And even whatever little light I have is only by the grace of Krishna. When Brahma came to that conclusion, he came out of his stunned state and opened his eyes again. And there he saw actually, let me go back. After seeing all the Vishnu forms, he was at another peak of bewilderment. But then to increase even that, suddenly all the Vishnu forms disappeared. And everything disappeared. All there was little Krishna, standing all alone with the same piece of Krishna surprise in his hand. Usually after a year, yogurt, turns. But it was exactly the same, fresh. When he saw just Krishna standing there all alone, that's the state where he went into complete bewilderment, and his senses and his mind totally shut down. And he realized, who is Krishna? And then when he opened his eyes again, there was Krishna, looking so innocent, like he was just, where is my friends? Where is my calves? Brahma then could see Vrindavan. He recognized Krishna for who he is. He's Rasa Bihari, he's Vrindavan Chandra, he's Kunja Bihari, he's Gopinath, he's Damodar. And then Brahma saw Vrindavan. Previously he was seeing it as an ordinary place, beautiful but ordinary place. But now, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochana Nena, now he had the eyes of love. Krishna's grace opened his eyes, and he saw every tree as a kalpabriksha tree. Every particle of dust as Chintamani, more precious than the most valuable celestial jewels. He saw every cow as a Kamadhenu, a Surabhi, a wish-fulfilling cow. He saw every blade of grass for intimate, infinite value. He saw all the different birds and the bees and the peacocks and the rivers, and he saw all living beings in Vrindavan as the eternal associates of Krishna. It's a beautiful lesson, how to see Vrindavan as it is. 1 minute before, he was seeing Vrindavan as a place where he was the creator. Ordinary. But after he humbled himself totally and surrendered to Krishna, Krishna revealed the truth of Vrindavan. This particular Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam how Brahma saw Vrindavan. He saw that all seasons were perfectly pleasurable for everyone. There was no hunger and no thirst. Everyone was fully satisfied with Krishna in the center of their lives. He saw something that was really remarkable. When Lord Chaitanya was going through Jarikanda forest, he was chanting. He induced the tigers to chant and dance in ecstatic love. Then he induced the deers to chant and dance in ecstatic love. And suddenly, the tigers were approaching the deers, not to eat them, like they had done every day before. And the deers were not running away for their lives in fear of the tigers. One tiger and one deer embraced. And all the tigers paired off with a deer to embrace. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said they were all kissing each other. It wasn't romantic. It was spiritual love. We can't imitate that. They were embracing and crying. They loved each other so dearly. And when Lord Chaitanya was seeing this, his heart was flooding with happiness. And he quoted a verse of Sukadeva Goswami in this particular chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, where even the humans and the animals who are naturally inimical toward each other, because Krishna was in the center, there was no fear. There was only pure affection. In the purport to this particular verse, Srila Prabhupada explains, how is this possible? Because when Krishna is actually in the center of our relationships, when he's in the center of our own individual personal lives, then there's no more envy. And as long as we have selfish desires, there will be envy. But when we truly desire for Krishna's happiness, then there's no envy. This is the symptom that Krishna is in the center of our life. We actually become the well-wishers of everyone. Everybody that Prabhupada wrote letters to, he would sign off, "Your ever well-wisher." He only wanted the good for everyone, because that's the way Krishna is. Samoham sarvabhuta. Krishna doesn't envy anyone. He only wants the best for everyone. And even we see when he punishes the asuras, he ultimately wants only the best for them. The whole material creation, the laws of karma, everything that's here, Krishna has created because he truly wants the best for everyone. And he descends to this world again and again and again for that reason. He's everyone's ever well-wisher. However many times we betray Krishna, however many times we violate Krishna's will, Krishna never leaves our heart. There are the laws of nature where we have to get reactions to our karma, but the Paramatma is always our friend and well-wisher, eagerly awaiting us to turn to him. So when we put Krishna in the center of our lives, there's no envy. When there's no envy, we can actually witness how Krishna's in the heart of everyone. And we become everyone's well-wisher. And we love everyone. Pandita Samadarshana. That's Vrindavan. Everyone is totally in love with each other. Everyone is totally a well-wisher for each other. Because everyone loves Krishna. I'd like to conclude today's class by reading a particular purport that Srila Prabhupada is writing just toward the end of this chapter. This is very important to us, because this story we are narrating today is the last chapter that Srila Prabhupada personally translated and gave his purports to. When Srila Prabhupada is writing the purports to this particular chapter, which is the conclusion of his direct translations of Srimad Bhagavatam, he's in Vrindavan. He's on the bed where he's soon going to depart from this world. Many of us have seen some of the footage that Yadubar Prabhu has taken, where Pradyumna Prabhu, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj, are standing at Prabhupada's bedside. He's not able to walk, he's not able to sit up. He's not even able to talk where humans could really hear him because his voice is so soft. And they're putting the microphone right up to his mouth, and he is dictating the translations and purports of this particular chapter, the Brahma Vimohan Lila. May I read? Thank you. Please listen carefully. This chapter has 64 verses. We're reading the 60th verse. So this is among the last 5 purports that Prabhupada has given us. He's dictating this now while laying in his bed in Vrindavan, just before his departure from the world. Yatra naisharaga duravaira sahasa nirmigadayaha mitran vajitavasa drutarut tashadkadikam. Vrindavan is the transcendental abode of the Lord, where there is no hunger, anger, or thirst. Though naturally inimical, both human beings and fierce animals live there together in transcendental friendship. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The word vana means forest. We are afraid of the forest and do not wish to go there. But in Vrindavan, the forest animals are as good as demigods, for they have no envy. Even in this material world, in the forest, the animals live together. And when they go to drink water, they do not attack anyone. Envy develops because of sense gratification. But in Vrindavan, there is no sense gratification, for the only aim is Krishna satisfaction. In this material world, the animals in Vrindavan are not envious of the sadhus who live there. The sadhus keep cows and supply milk to the tigers, saying, "Come here and take a little milk." Thus, envy and malice are unknown in Vrindavan. This is what Srila Prabhupada is saying. That is the difference between Vrindavan and the ordinary world. We are horrified to hear the name Vana, the forest, but in Vrindavan, there is no such horror. Everyone there is happy by pleasing Krishna. Krishnot kirtana gana nardana baro. Whether a Goswami or a tiger or other ferocious animal, everyone's business is the same, to please Krishna. Even the tigers are also devotees. This is the specific qualification of Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, everyone is happy. The calf is happy. The cat is happy. The dog is happy. The man is happy. Everyone wants to serve Krishna in a different capacity, and thus there is no envy. One may sometimes think that the monkeys in Vrindavan are envious because they cause mischief and steal food. But in Vrindavan, we find that the monkeys are allowed to take butter, which Krishna himself distributes. Krishna personally demonstrates that everyone has the right to live. This is Vrindavan life. Why should I live and you die? No, that is material life. The inhabitants of Vrindavan think, whatever is given by Krishna, let us divide it as prasad and eat. This mentality cannot appear all of a sudden, but it will gradually develop in Krishna consciousness. By sadhana, one can come to this platform. In the material world, one may collect funds all over the world in order to distribute food freely, yet those to whom the food is given may not even feel appreciative. The value of Krishna consciousness, however, will gradually be very much appreciated. For instance, in an article about the temple of the Hare Krishna movement in Durban, South Africa, the Durban Post reported, all the devotees here are very active in the service of Lord Krishna, and the results are obvious to see: happiness, good health, peace of mind, and the development of all good qualities. This is the nature of Vrindavan. Harava bhaktasya kato mahad guna. Without Krishna consciousness, happiness is impossible. One may struggle, but one cannot have happiness. We are therefore trying to give human society the opportunity for a life of happiness, good health, peace of mind, and all good qualities through God consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada is explaining what Brahma is seeing. Srila Prabhupada is explaining what he is seeing. Srila Prabhupada is seeing the potential of what each and every one of us is meant to see in our life as we become Krishna conscious. Brahma then comes off after he sees Vrindavan as it is, as the spiritual world. His 8 eyes are flooded with tears. He comes off of his swan carrier, which is like his exalted seat, and he offers full Dandavat pranams, prostrating his whole body again and again at Krishna's lotus feet. And from his eyes, he bathes the lotus feet of Krishna in a mood of full surrender, and then begins to offer his historical prayers of love. All the while, Krishna, in this beautiful little form of a 6-year-old child, is standing with that little lump of yogurt, rice, and fruit in his hand. Krishna means all attractive. Brahma has realized, greater than all incarnations, greater than Narayan and Vaikuntha, is Krishna, who's appeared as an ordinary little child, a cowherd boy in Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.